Welcome to another coffee break here on my channel Firm Learning. My name is Heinrich and on Firm Learning I want to help you with your career. And this is why today I will teach you a key technique that you can leverage to fast track and advance your career progression. And it took me about 10 years to fully understand what I will teach you in today's video. This included 6 years of working at McKinsey as a consultant, later project lead. This included my role as a CTO of a German retail company with about 60 stores, and then a later role as a COO at a tech scale-up. And this is the idea of the power vacuum, so of how to claim a power vacuum. And there are some traditional strategies that exist to advance inside a given organization. You might want to wait for your lead to leave, right? For your lead to either be promoted or step out of the company, because of course this might then entail an opportunity for you to advance into the role of him or her. Or you might look for other role openings inside your organization that might fit your goals, your career ambitions, where then you can do an internal transition. But often, of course, these two strategies depend on factors that you do not fully control. It might take years or even decades, if at all, for your direct lead to move out of the current position. And you do not know for sure when and if at all another opportunity opens inside your organization for a new role. And there is one often misunderstood, overlooked strategy that I want to talk about in today's video. And this is the idea that often there are power vacuums inside organizations that you can claim. The mindset that this entails is that you need to identify and claim a power vacuum which allows you to advance your role in the organization. And so let's look at this conceptually. What do I exactly mean by this idea of a power vacuum? Often in these organizations, and this by the way applies both to big corporates but also to smaller organizations, to SMBs, arguably even to scale-ups, startups. And then in these organizations you might have a very formal organigram, right? There are all the different teams, marketing, sales, customer success, product management, finance, HR, engineering. Of course, the exact logic depends on the type of company you're working for. And then technically, these departments, these teams are supposed, of course, cover all the relevant areas of responsibilities that the company is supposed to work on. But what almost always is the case, that in practice, there are some smaller areas of responsibilities which are not actively covered, either because they're just completely missing from the organigram, but very often technically they might fall under the area of responsibility of any of these technical teams, but the team is just not picking up on them for good reasons or not the good reasons, but essentially there is a vacuum that is being created that no one is actively filling, right? No one is taking responsibility for this very specific area of the business. And the best thing is that this is very often not even a secret. You will have people walking around an organization openly calling this out. And if you just introspect about your current role or past roles, I trust most of you, including myself, when I look at the companies I've been working for, there are almost always more or less obvious areas where things are not working, where processes are broken, where people are calling out that in this very specific area there are problems. Things are not going according to plan, or maybe that's even the problem, that there's no plan at all how certain areas are supposed to be worked on. And this is then the playing field of people that I like to call problem talkers in an organization. These people feel super smart about walking around and saying, this is clearly broken. Of course, this doesn't work. Implying that people are stupid. People around them are stupid for not recognizing them, not understanding them. They pride themselves that they are the ones smart enough to find out that this is not working and then wondering why no one is doing something about it. Though what you need to understand is that problem talkers are not really valued in most organizations. It is typically not correct that they are the only one identifying it. Typically, everyone is knowing about this, or most people are aware of this, often also including the direct supervisors, including the leads. The challenge lies not so much in identifying the problem, the challenge is more about solving the problem. You don't want to be a problem talker, but you want to be a problem solver. Instead of just talking about it, you want to adopt the mindset that, yes, everyone knows this process is broken, but I will be the person who is now doing something about this. I will take action to fix it. I will step in, I will create a solution, and I will have an impact. Though the value the problem talkers can provide to you is that they are essentially proof points. They are pointers of exactly these power vacuums, which are then opportunities for you to just grab, to just claim, because apparently no one else is properly doing it. So I want to share a few case studies based on things that I actually experienced myself, things where I have witnessed how other people around me have identified and claimed power vacuums like this, which hopefully are an inspiration for you as well. So let's say you work for an organization where the sales onboarding is not set up in a super professional way. Essentially, new hires are just coming in, maybe observing some sales conversations, and are then supposed to just step in, pick up the rope, and just learn the things by themselves. This, of course, is not great for the business, because then this leads to long ramp times. It might take the new salespeople 6 months, 12 months, or even longer before they are fully productive, which is costing the business a lot of money. And if you identify this, this might be an opportunity for you, right? Why don't you just create some sales education materials, some checklists, sales scripts that you can leverage, some other training materials, so you document essentially the knowledge that already exists in the team within some of the senior reps. You maybe volunteer to create some trainings, passing on some of this knowledge to the junior reps. And if this works well, suddenly your whole visibility in the team will be elevated. You will be now the go-to person for these types of training initiatives. You will significantly increase the visibility and likely advancing your career in the very same way. Next, contract management. Often it happens that contracts in organizations are not managed very well. It's a bit of a freestyle thing where there may be some rough templates or people just copy-paste parts of text from one contract to the other. This, of course, creates risks, inefficiencies. And if you're identifying this, why don't you just not only complain about this, but why are you not creating the templates, some standardized documents that then can be shared across the team? Maybe if you're doing this well, suddenly you have the role to now review the contracts, right? Review contracts of other team members to make sure that they are compliant with these types of standards that you are setting. And suddenly, essentially, you're almost like a lead role, right? That is now reviewing, supervising all of these topics just by doing that. Or controlling and financial modeling topics. Very often organizations struggle with clear and reliable data. There are no clear KPIs tracked. Often leadership doesn't have visibility on the actual numbers of the business, or maybe just very superficial numbers, but not the more detailed ones. So why isn't it you creating dashboards, reports that now suddenly inform decisions of management much better, suddenly turning you or your team into the trusted source of information for many of these topics, now enabling you to suddenly join very senior discussion rounds because you have the database, the fact base, that then decisions are being grounded on. These are just some examples. Of course, you can do lots of other things as well, but I hope you can see that if you apply these tactics, this would allow you even as a junior to step up, claim these types of power vacuums, and now suddenly elevating your whole career. And also specifically based on these very case studies, I'm building these examples on. Especially the first and the second one, these were indeed driven by juniors, junior people within the first years of their career who were able to do just that. I hope that by now you're buying into the idea that it makes sense for your career progression to expand your influence, to actually identify and claim these power vacuums. So let's shortly also talk about what actually constitutes a good power vacuum, because for sure not all of them are created equal. And let's talk about 3 key criteria for that. First, importance. So this power vacuum should lead to problems in the organization which are of importance, where there's value in actually solving and addressing these problems. Second, strengths. These power vacuums should be linked to your strengths. So you should be in a good position to actually resolve these problems that are being created by these power vacuums. And then third, neglect. So it's not only there, but actually people don't really care about it. For good or not so good reasons, people do not really address it right now, which then is creating exactly the opportunity for you. So I would like to invite you to now reflect on that. Maybe in your current role, or maybe also in past roles that you have been part of, which power vacuums existed, right? So what were exactly these problems, all the problem talkers in the organization were complaining about all the time, even though no one was actually doing something about it? Reflect on that, and I would be surprised if doesn't matter if your organization is big or small, you wouldn't be able to find some of these very opportunities for you to step into. So if you already took any value out of the video so far, please hit the like button and subscribe to stay up to date on all my content. Big thanks also to all the channel members. If you're interested in topics like this and would like to talk to us how you can leverage, for instance, power vacuums in your organization as well, this is exactly what we created our Firm Learning Mentoring Program for, where we are working with professionals across different tenures, across different seniority levels to help them fast track their career. If this is of interest, we offer free initial consultations. Sign up, there's a link in the video description where you have the opportunity to talk to me and other colleagues of my team to review your very individual situation. Back to the topic of power vacuums, I now want to share some pointers, some little tips and tricks what you actually can do very technically to claim such a power vacuum as soon as you have identified it. And ideally you do this two ways. And you can always start with this bottom-up approach. So just start by doing some little innocent things. Maybe you realize, as just shared, that there's a problem with the sales onboarding. So why don't you just create a simple innocent asset, maybe a checklist, a little guide, a little best practice summary list that you then are circulating with the team. Just a small little thing like this, just to test the waters, right? You want to see how is this perceived? Do people benefit from that? Is there positive reaction? Positive feedback on that? And if this is the case, then this can be the basis for you to actually double down on that, create more substantial, more expansive materials. And then as soon as you see that this is creating a certain level of traction, you might also want to formalize this in a more top-down way, right? So if you're joining a meeting with maybe your direct lead, or maybe you are already in a rather senior role, you're joining a leadership meeting, then you're stressed, right? That you feel like that the responsibilities on this topic are not explained, pronounced enough. Maybe propose that you would be willing to step up here, take responsibility for that. Maybe you start by setting up something like a RACI matrix to now suddenly give you also the formal responsibility for these types of topics. And then based on maybe some small pointers you created in the bottom-up way, you're now doubling down and formalizing your responsibility for this area indeed. So essentially the workflow is you solved it once with a little asset. Now you're creating some type of process, some structure around it. And then at some point you might even be able to create a full team around that. Depends a bit on the topic, but sometimes this is warranted. And now suddenly you are leading a big team or you're expanding your direct reports. And of course, this is not always an end in itself, but I trust it's not difficult to see how these types of things, if done right, will help you to move your career in the right direction. Super interested to hear from you what you think about this topic as well. Leave a comment in the comment section. Trust we all can only learn from each other. Very much looking forward to stay in touch with you and see you here with the next video on the channel very soon.